Welcome everybody to to
Happy
this to the class, and this Shabbat is Shabbat Mishpatim, and this is perfect again for all the lawyers in the crowd. Mishpatim literally means trials or courts or justice system. Last Shabbat we received the law. It was the Ten Commandments received from heaven, but the challenge is how to bring those big sayings. The word for the Ten Commandments in Hebrew is actually the ten sayings. So they're big chapters. They're saying, don't murder, don't steal, honor your parents, God is one. So these are big statements, but how do you live them on earth? And we concluded last Shabbat by saying that now the next Shabbat, which is today, um, the next chapter is how to unpack these big statements into little activities on earth. And philosophically, we kind of explained that the more um, the task on Earth is smaller, the more potential to be heavenly on Earth. Okay, it sounds like it's counterintuitive, but this is how the world works. God created the world with opposites. So whatever is more earthly is really has the potential to become more heavenly. And we explained it with the scroll, the Torah scroll, that it's a skin of a dead animal. It's the most earthly you can have. But once you take heaven and write the words of God on this earthly matter, you elevate it to the highest, and it becomes the holiest vessel that we have today. So today we'll look at what is the Torah telling us about the most earthly thing that we can have on a daily basis, just the thing that we don't think too much about, and how they would be too heavenly. When we walk our ox on the street, how heavenly can that be? If the ox gores someone, our neighbors, and then we have to debate on the damages, how heavenly can this be? But these are actually the most heavenly um, that activities that we can have. And and why would that be? Because of two things. One, the point is in life is to arrive one mindset. And that mindset, and I'll give you an example from the Talmud when during Second Temple time, there was the big rabbi, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He was the biggest in the generation. And a few days before he died, his students came to him and asked him to bless them. And what he said to them is really the essence of what we're talking about. He said, I wish for you that you will feel in front of people like you feel in front of God. And what does that mean? It means that when somebody wants to do something and they know that it's wrong to do, right? Stealing, lying, they always look if somebody is listening to them or seeing them, right? They have that fear of people. And he wished upon them as a blessing that the fear of heaven will be as much on upon them as the fear of people. For example, if you're in front of people, you want to dress nicely, right? You want to be clean. You want to appear right. So even if you're by yourself, you have to understand that God is watching you. Now, it has two sides to it. One is that God is always watching you, it's the big brother watching. Yes. But on the other hand, it's the protection that you feel that, yes, God is watching us wherever we are. So it has those two sides to it, which means that in every little thing we do, God is there. So that's the one big concept that we need to achieve in life. And the derivative of this is justice. And this is why the word mishpatim here, mishpatim, beit mishpat in Hebrew is court. So what God is actually doing in this portion is telling us, I just gave you big statements, but you will have to bring it to earth, which means you'll have a lot of questions about it. And you'll have to go to court. You'll have to go to your rabbis, to the knowledgeable people to explain to you how those big statements manifest themselves in little activities in life. But the bottom line is that God, to bring heaven to earth, to live like God is always with us, no matter what we do, the bottom line of everything is to create a just society. Bringing heaven to earth is creating just society on earth. Think of what makes people the happiest, right? If you know that there's a sense of justice in this world. So justice can manifest itself in material things or in spiritual or somehow actions. And I'll give you an example before we start reading the text. There is one of the scenarios that we will be reading about is someone who accidentally kills somebody else. They didn't mean it, but they accidentally kill somebody. So the Talmud tells us that even this accident is not accidental. Why? Because it says that the person that kills someone, right, the judgment, and if it's on purpose, the judgment is that they will have to be judged and will be put to death, because it's a measure for measure. And we'll get to that because we have that phrase, measure for measure, here in our portion today, which is a very important concept. And the person who let's say did something, killed somebody, or damaged somebody, but didn't say anything, right? They're supposed to, if they killed somebody and sorry, unintentionally, they're supposed to, their punishment is exile. So here we have two people that one killed each other accidentally. So the Talmud tells us that the person who died in this accident is that person who killed somebody intentionally, and there were no witnesses. So you never knew about it. So he gets his punishment one way or another. Right? Through that accident, he gets the death punishment. The one who kills them accidentally is the one that killed accidentally and he was supposed to exile when there were no witnesses. So in one scenario, what we look at as an accident, even then, God somehow brings justice to the world. So we can bring justice to the world, but to know that even if we don't bring justice to the world, God has his own justice system. So the bottom line of this whole portion is bringing heaven to earth, is understanding the justice system, bringing a justice system into this world. Okay, so the first thing that God tells Moses is these are the rules that you shall set before them. Now, if there's a justice system in this world, what is the number one concept that people want to have in this life? What is the most important thing that, and we live in America, I'm giving you a big hint. Freedom. Freedom is the biggest, right? The that we strive for. Biggest idea. To give me freedom or give me death. Who said that?
Give me liberty or give me
Give me liberty or give me death.
Patrick Henry.
Patrick Henry.
Right.
And he was
somebody from I think he was from Massachusetts.
He was one of the founding fathers. Yeah. So, and of course, the liberty is the whole idea. And actually, last Shabbat, when we received the Ten Commandments, the Torah tells us, the Talmud tells us about the Torah. When we talked about the engraved Ten Commandments, the word engraved in Hebrew is charut, and the Mishnah tells us, don't call it charut, call it cherut. And cherut in Hebrew is freedom. Meaning when you engrave laws and justice system that is really just, this is where you get the freedom. So law and order go together with freedom, of course. And societies that don't have and don't respect their laws and their justice system, and it's really not really just, it's because somebody knows the judge or you paid bribery. You know that at the end, the whole thing collapses and nobody wants to live there. And if you think about it, why do people want to come to live in America? Because, don't shrug there, I saw that, because people still believe that in America, there are laws to protect human rights. So, because, there are places in the world, I've traveled a lot, you traveled a lot, there are many places in the world that are beautiful, are vast, have everything, right? Rich in natural resources. So America, as beautiful as it is, and it is very beautiful and rich in so many things, but there are other places in the world that you can go and be impressed with. So why America? Because America created this checks and balances and justice system. Again, not perfect yet. We still live on earth. We're not in heaven. But we and the founding fathers, whatever you would want to say about them, they were religious, they were deists, whatever they were, they definitely believe that we are under God, that heaven is watching our actions. So this is exactly where we are. So the first thing, even with the Ten Commandments, the concept is freedom. And how do we know that? Even without the play of words of charut and cherut and engraved and the laws, it's very simple. We came out of the house of slavery from a system of slavery. So why come out of a system of slavery if the point is not house of freedom? So that's the the bottom line. So it won't surprise you that the first rule that God is telling us relates to freedom. And what it is, it says, if you acquire a male Hebrew slave, he shall serve 6 years. In the seventh year, he shall go free without payment, which means that, I mean, yes, you can cringe here. You can say, what you just said, this is about freedom. How come you're talking about slavery here? Ah, the point is coming out of slavery. The concept of slavery or forces that would want to enslave you always exist in this world. It's actually part of God's creation and design, so we can pursue freedom all the time and pursue freedom and pursue justice. That's why it says, justice, justice shall you pursue. That's really because we are in what the Kabbalah says. We are in there are four worlds that cascade from each other, from heaven all the way to earth. And the earthly world that we live in is the world of action, the world of asiyah. It's not a world of heavenly place where all the angels sit around the glory of God and just enjoy God's presence. And when we finish our 120 years here and we go up to heaven, that's it. We can't do anything anymore because we don't have the body. We don't have the ability to act. So in this world, we have to act. And it's we mentioned a couple of weeks ago that it is like a banquet. The Talmud tells us that this place, this world, is like a banquet. We have to eat and do and enjoy and be in action because one day, 1 minute, the banquet ends, right? At midnight, Cinderella goes home and it's finished. So the idea here that we will always act and always fight forces that want to bring us back to the Egypt to enslavement through injustice and through other means. Okay, so what it means here that you have a Hebrew slave is to slavery is there, and people somehow have to sell themselves because they were somehow fell into debt and they have to be slaves. But even there's a limit. And a Hebrew slave, there's a new concept here. It's the evolution in the Torah. It's to say, yes, we start at a certain point, but we don't stay there. We are now going to start creating a society that will come out of slavery. So we limit it to 6 years, and that's it. Now, it says if the slave comes in with his family, he leaves with the family, but if he acquires the family while he was a slave, the family stays. He can leave if he wants to. And if he doesn't want to leave, he wants to stay with his master, then the master takes him to the door and nail his ear to the door, meaning may pierces his earlobe, and kind of puts an earring there, and to signify to both the public that he's not holding him against his will, but also for the slaves themselves. Haven't you heard that you can be free in this world? So, but the point is, when people say, "How can I love Bill Maher and I watch him a lot, and I think he has a lot of wisdom," but I of course disagree with him on a very important concept when he says, "I don't believe in the Bible and the Bible condones slavery." And one day when I meet with him, I'm going to say, how can you say that the Bible condones slavery when four books out of the five books of Moses is all about leaving slavery in Egypt? So it's a process that we put in place. So then, even when that person is your slave, then you have to treat them with benefits, the social benefits. And it goes to now to the maid servant, which is even weaker than the male servant. Um, and it says if you take another wife, meaning that maid servant becomes your wife, he must not withhold from her her food, her clothing, and her conjugal rights. And this is incredible. This is incredible. This is the first time in the Bible and in any society that this is a right of a person. That if the wife, if there's no marital relations, the you're not doing your duty in this relationship. And to me, when we talk about the most unjust case that we can find in Judaism today is the case of the chained women. The chained women are women are that our husbands don't want to give them a get, don't want to divorce them somehow, not give them the sign their divorce, or they disappeared somehow and we don't know where they are. And the wife cannot remarry. She's chained to that marriage. And I don't understand that at all. Why rabbis today even allow a case like this to happen? Because it says very clearly in the Torah, if the husband fails in these three things, right? Give her clothing, and also it means shelter too, food, shelter, and marital relation. And it says, if he fails in these three ways, she shall go free without payment. Meaning, it's very easy to just say, okay, if the husband is not there for, let's say, a year, even we can even say 2 years. After that, if he's not there to be responsible for that, that's it. Goodbye. So that's the first thing that we have after Mount Sinai. It's very interesting that these are the first laws that God or the Torah decides to tell us are the most important when we bring heaven to earth. Our liberty, our freedom. Okay, now it starts telling us all kinds of nezikin. Nezikin are damages. And the Torah introduces here something that then the Talmud expands to three very big tractates, very big books. And it's called damages. And interestingly, the Torah can direct every damage we have in life, right? Because think about it, just society, when people live, somebody's always going to damage somebody else. There's always going to be, now it could be accidental and it could be malicious, but there's always going to be friction between people. So that you have to have a mechanism of the justice system. So we're forming the justice system. The Jewish justice system has four legs. Four legs. And what are the legs? What are you can trace every damage in your life to one of four damage roots. And the way that the Torah tells us here So three are listed here clearly. It's right in the text. One is assumed from the text and is expounded upon in the Talmud, in the oral tradition. But it is suggested in here. So the first one is the ox. The second one is the fire. The third one is a pit. And the fourth is the debatable one that is not clear in the text, but in general, it means a derivative of your actions, something that is derived from your action, and we will talk about it. So in the time remaining here, we will talk about these four examples and how everything goes falls into one of these four categories. And again, this is so significant because these are the four elements that are the whole Jewish justice system is founded upon. So the first case, it says when an ox gores a man or a woman to death, the ox shall be stoned and its flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox is not to be punished. Okay, so that's the first category of damages, the ox. So what does that mean? It means that yes, a person owns the ox. So let's say a modern, I mean, some people still own oxes, but let's say you own a dog, right? And the dog bites somebody. Now, yes, you're the owner of the dog, but the dog has his own, or her, she or he has their own motives, let's say, right? Now, then, okay, then the dog has to be put away or whatever it is. But you, as a person, now again, it talks about the first time that it happens, that you didn't know the dog has this propensity. But it says, if, however, the ox has been in the habit of goring, it's a goring ox, and its owner, though warned, has failed to guard it, and it kills a man or a woman, okay, that's already a different category. Let's say even well, a car is not a good example because you directly drive the car. But anything that has its own mind, an animal that you own, the ox shall be stoned, and its owner too shall be put to death. And a goring ox, according to the Talmud, it has to define how many times. It's the third time. If it gores once, okay. A second time, maybe it was a coincidence. You know, there's an incident, coincidence, and a pattern. This is how it goes. And a third time is a pattern. That's why everything in Judaism goes by three, because a three is a pattern already. So that if the ox gores three times, then of course the ox is liable to be whatever put away, but then the owner, of course, is now responsible and put to death. It's a direct responsible for of the owner. Now, and this is the next example. It says, if ransom is imposed to redeem the life, whatever is imposed must be paid. So we now have the first clue about the eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, and all that, um, which is in our portion here, because because the we don't necessarily want to take life. I mean, it's not about when it says eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. We skipped that part because I explained it orally, but the Torah is very specific about every part of the body or every damage, which means that you we don't take it literally, and this is the basis for all the oral tradition, that we don't take this literally. That's what the Talmud tells us, that there are places that we don't take literally, but yet we, of course, take them still very seriously. So an eye for an eye doesn't necessarily mean literally, but you have to compensate the value of the eye. So here is the first example how we don't take it literally, that the person has to die, because they can also pay for it, and then whatever the damages are, they have to pay it. The second thing is, so too, if it gores a minor, male or female, it should be dealt with according to the same rule. Okay, that's a different thing. And then if it gores a slave, there's worth money and all that. Okay, the second thing is, when someone opens a pit or digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox or a donkey falls into it, of course, it could also be a person that falls into it. The one responsible for the pit must make restitution, paying the price to the owner, but keeping the dead animal. Okay, so what it means now, it's a different category. Why is it a different category? Because when you have an ox, you still it still has its own will, right? But with the pit doesn't move. And so when you open the pit, you knew that if you don't cover it, it's a damage. You're gonna damage somebody, right? So you have to pay restitution right from the beginning. It's not like you get three warnings and so forth. You you knew this had to be. You're putting a what we say, an obstacle in front of a blind person, and that's its own category, of course. So you have to pay restitution, but whatever the damage, let's say the ox fell and died in the pit, then because the ox itself doesn't have a bad spirit, not a goring ox that you have to get rid of that spirit, you can use that ox, meaning you can use it for the meat. It's not a kosher meat now because it wasn't slaughtered, but you can sell the meat to non-Jews, or use the skin and benefit from that animal. Okay, so this is the second the second damage. Then we have the third one. It says, if okay, there's a in between, there are different verses that I'm not saying because I want to stay with those four categories. Um, because the after the pit, which is right, it's It's a category of putting a stumbling block before a blind person, which means it's the category of doing something in hiding. So the Torah gives another example, a few other examples of people who do things secretively and then they're caught. And for example, if the thief seized while it says when someone steals an ox or a sheep and slaughters it or sells it, 5 oxen shall be paid for an ox, meaning you have to, it's 5 times. They have to pay 5 times. If the thief is seized while tunneling, they're still hiding, and beaten to death, there is no blood guilt in that case. Meaning, if you find the guilty party, so it would be a different, I guess, ruling than like the what is that? The protecting your home. I forget the terminology. Um, if a thief comes to your house and you shoot them, um, it's yeah. There's a legal term for that, um, homestead or something. So, meaning if somebody is coming to hurt you and it's a they are damaged in the process of self-defense, then you're not guilty for damaging them. Okay, and then again the thievery and the secretively. And then the third category, when a fire, so right, so we had the ox, we had the pit, and now it's the fire. When a fire is started and spread to thorns, so that stacked, standing, or growing grain is consumed, the one who started the fire must make restitution. So the fire, it's its own category. Why? Because it's something that you started here. Now, you didn't have the intention. Of course, that's we're talking about something that's not malicious. If it's malicious, of course, it has its own level of liability. But if you started a fire here, you just had a fire pit and you want to burn your mail, and whatever, a few things that instead of shredding them, and it goes into to your neighbor's yard, then of course you have to. So it's its own category because you started it here. So it's not like the ox that you know that they or didn't know in the beginning, and then you knew it has the potential of harming the pit that you know that if you it's not movable, and if it's a stationary and you have to cover it. But a fire is almost like it is a third category because it started stationary, but then it gets its own thorns, but its own kind of will, if you want. So then, of course, so if we think about maybe an example from our lives is well, you can take this literal example, but there are many other examples that we can give about that. So one of the examples that the Torah gives in this category, if let's say you wanted to keep somebody's property and somebody comes and takes it from you, right? You didn't mean for it to be stolen, but it's your responsibility somehow. So it's all these ideas of category that you started something here, but you don't know where it goes. Um, it says, for example, if one person borrows from another and it dies or it injures its owner not being with it, restitution must be made. So again, it on the surface it may not sound like it's part of one of those categories, but you can fit it in one of these categories. So if you you borrow something, right? But something happened to what you borrowed. It could be in the category of the fire because you started something and then it took a different direction. You're still responsible for the derivative of it. The not the derivative, the action that came out of it. The fourth category that is not literally here, but it's suggested is that if you do something and your consequence, so it's not like the fire. It's a nuance. It's almost a nuance of the fire because even the word in Hebrew is similar, and the Mishnah talks about it. The word for fire is mav'er. It's esh. The word is esh, but is lehavir is to light the fire. And the fourth category is mav'eh. It's a very similar word for the fire to um, start the fire, and the rabbis in the Talmud are debating about it in the sense of whether so we understand that it's a derivative of something you did. The question is it the derivative of yourself, meaning when you are liable at the end, it would be because you did something or because your consequence damaged. So the expressions that they are using in the Talmud is the person versus a tooth. Okay, a tooth is something that bites on, right? But it's not the person themselves, but it's the consequence of their action. Okay, if your animal goes to another yard and eats the neighbor's um, whatever grain, right? It's not like the fire because the fire you started it and you're responsible directly for the fire, and the fire took its own direction. But let's say if you have an animal, right, and you didn't close the gate, or you knew somehow you needed to hold the animal from eating the grain, that so who's responsible? You're definitely responsible. The question is it directly on the person or the animal that ate the tooth that ate the grain? So these are nuances of the law, but these are the four categories that the all Jewish law is based upon. And I would love to hear also your opinion about it, Barry, for sure, as an attorney. Um, if you see some similarities to the American law justice system that is put into those categories.
Certainly, the whole law of torts, what they call tortious acts, which come out of acts, whether you're intended the act, whether it's by accident, whether you're responsible for the act, all that comes out of those kind of categories. So um, I was taken by one aspect where you mentioned about the slave who's able to be freed after 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
However, if he starts a family,
Right.
not allowed to take that family, and that disturbed me.
Yeah.
I don't know what we say about that.
So it's disturbing. Um, but what is explained here that it's probably not does not mean a Jewish wife. So again, you have to understand that it's taking steps here. So it separates between a Hebrew slave and a non-Hebrew slave. A Hebrew slave can only be 6 years. A non-Hebrew slave it could be forever
Just
Hmm.
because the Hebrew slave is not considered property. A non-Hebrew slave is still in the category of property. So if you look at it from that prism, which it means that if he gives him a wife from his non-Jewish slaves, that means that his children and the family that he has now, they are considered property, which means, let's say you work for a university and the university pays for your research. The money that the university makes on this research, it belongs to the university. It doesn't belong to the researcher. So it's the closest kind of example. I know it's very disturbing because it's a human being, but it's a different category of a human being. Again, we've evolved from there, and eventually you don't want to own any slaves. But even let's say even if we take the example of George Washington, George Washington was the first founding father that freed his slaves. But he did it in two different ways. One is when he had to move from New York to Philadelphia, the first capital to the established capital, while they're waiting for Washington, D.C. to be established, to be built. Um, he left his servants in New York, and the meaning was he freed them that way. He didn't bring them back with him because the North, of course, not the North at that point, but that settlement, or the 13
Colonies,
uh, the 13
colonies.
colonies. So in New York, they didn't have the slavery laws. So he freed them that way. But then um, after he died, right, in his will, he said that all his slaves will be freed. But he didn't free them in his lifetime. So which means that every system had a kind of an evolution. And of course, today when we look at the slavery even of George Washington or Jefferson, how can we look at them as our founding fathers when they owned slaves? But there's evolution in everything, and there's no way that this can be overnight. But to your question, the nuance here is that they were not Jewish slaves. What he gave. Yes, here from the audience here, Deborah.
most of the wives in Judaism thus far into this, right, text have not been Jewish, including Moses's wife, right? So how do you split hairs like that?
So most of the wives, so Deborah is asking, most of the wives at this point were not Jewish. It's at this point they are, because the Jewish people are already a nation when they come out of Egypt. So there's plenty of Jewish wives. But you're right. Eventually, originally nobody was Jewish, so they married out, so to speak.
Even
But
Moses, I mean,
Moses
right?
married, right, the Midianite, and she
Yeah.
became you know converting at that point was to live with the people. Yeah, and eventually, when they were all circumcised, and then became Jewish that way. But but there were plenty of Jewish wives at this point the of Mount Sinai. But
Back to Bill
but
Maher.
even if he married a wife that was not, and she converts or she becomes Jewish, then of course, then
It's a-
she is under the same category. But this is not that category. When he acquires a wife for a Jewish slave, a servant, and it's not a Jewish woman, she doesn't convert it because it's a different relationship. It's like he's giving him property. I know it's to our modern ears is very disturbing, but that is the evolution of the freedom.
Well, people hearing of that evolution, I think, is very important. Like when you have someone like Bill Maher, who
Yes,
purposes is well intentioned, but is extrapolating.
exactly. People don't understand the evolution here. We live in a free society today, but we had to evolve into it. And of course, America in general, the was evolved from Judaism and from the Judeo-Christian values. So everything is an evolution. I mean, there are revolutions in this world, and there are times that we just as we say, break the vessels and you start over. But in general, there's evolution in societies, and so to kind of summarize what the point here of that comes right after the law that comes from heaven is to tell us now you'll have to deal with all these heavenly concepts on earth, and you'll have a lot of questions like you just had and a lot of debates about it, and people will damage each other. And but you can't forget that all this is still a heavenly project to bring heaven to earth and find justice within every interaction that we have
We're going to ask you
upon
this,
earth.
Rabbi,
Mhm.
because certainly pre-Civil War, we had a slave society, and many sincere people in the South used the Bible
Yes.
as a way of condoning the right to own slaves. And they felt in all sincerity that this was right. Now, is
Right.
that, can you say to them now, does the Bible accept that position?
They were mistaken on one. Of course, they were mistaken because they didn't see the evolution in it. But on the other hand, this is literally speaking about a Hebrew slave. So if you have a non-Hebrew slave, especially the black people, that they, of course, the origin of black people in the Bible is to the refers to the Ham, the son of Noah, the third son of Noah, which is the African. So we know that these are the African nations, and his father curses him to be a slave. So they put these two together, and they said, we are fulfilling a biblical prophecy in a sense that definitely there are people who are slaves in the Bible, and specifically black people, African, are were cursed by Noah to be slaves. Again, they were mistaken for different reasons. One, a curse doesn't mean that it's here to stay forever. I mean, it's a maybe he that's what he intended, but the example that is given is that let's say a parent punishes the child to go to sleep without dinner because they behaved wrongly. But if one of the siblings will bring, like, sneak in dinner for the other sibling, right? The parent will see it as something even, charming, that they help each other. So the fact that Noah cursed his son doesn't mean that we have the obligation to enslave black people. And second, even if it doesn't say specifically that non-Hebrew slaves should go free, but the whole concept of the Torah, of the Bible, is coming out of slavery. So that should just be a very simple idea to if you're evolved, then definitely the direction is to get out of slavery and not hold on to it. Yeah. And last question here
Oh,
with
it's last.
I
Okay.
want to do the Misha Bera so we can end the
No, I was just going to say about the justification for ham. I mean, my understanding from American history was that that was used by in an attempt to Christianize
Mhm.
non-Christian people of color who were taken from Africa,
Mhm.
and to make the religion justify their place in society, and
Yeah.
that was completely an appropriation on
Hmm.
the part of the
Hmm.
people who were trying to assimilate them into the population as a subspecies of human.
Hmm.
So that's my understanding. So
Hmm.
where, and also my question would be, where is it in the Torah that it's the African nation, the black nation? Where is that? Wasn't everyone pretty much black then or dark?
No, no. So I'll start with your second question. Where does it say that black people are Ham? The after the Noah's three children came out of the ark, they spread to the three continents, and they had progeny. And wait, and we know that the progeny, according to their names in the Bible, became the nations, and we know where those nations are. So the Ham nations are all in Africa. Cush, Mitzrayim, Egypt, they're all in Africa. So we know that it's not just a theory. So these are the Africans. So whether black or not, these are the Africans, mainly black people. So that's the first question. Your second about the appropriation into the religion and given the example of how they brought them and excused their slavery into bringing them to Christianity. Of course, there's so many levels of wrongdoing here because even if the minute, let's say you took them as slaves when they were not Christian, but the minute they're Christians, you know that they have to be free people because that's the whole point of the Bible is about freedom and the Judeo-Christian values. So, okay, I hope this was educating
Right.
and thank you very much, everybody.